Hi, everyone. So, this week we're going to talk about strategy, a little bit more about backwards planning, and how to write learning objectives. I was hoping to not have a cold, so I waited a little bit while before I recorded this video, but I still have a cold and I need to get this video out, so we're going to do it. All right, today um, I am set up in a classroom. I'm going to try to use the whiteboard. This is often what you'll see when you are recording conferences and then trying to use them for e-learning. There's some good and bad to it, which you'll see in just a little bit. I'm going to be using the whiteboard to talk about backwards planning now, actually. So let's start with that. We talked about backwards planning last week. And when we talked about last week, we're talking about how you start with what the business outcome is. So actually, I'm going to start there. So I already wrote it down. Business outcome. And from those business outcomes, the next step is what uh, what's your learning goal? So the learning goal is whatever is going to impact that business outcome. Um, and from there, I'm going to run out of space. So I'm going to move just a little bit this way. Um, we have the skills. These are also learning objectives. And from there, we have our content. So when we plan with our business outcomes. For example, it might be increasing revenue, it might be getting students to uh, graduate, um, or something like that. And then the learning goal is the outcome of the learning. So this is different from learning objectives. The learning goal is sort of this broader measure. So it would be like operations engineers are able to manage RFCs with a low failure rate. That would be a learning goal. Okay, it's different than an objective because a learning objective is small and measurable. It's very specific. Those learning objectives would be like um, learning engineer or operations engineers are able to identify um, change types and categorize them or something like that. So it's very specific. So think of learning objectives um, as like stepping stones for the learning goal. So you'll have multiple learning objectives and they encompass this learning goal. Okay. And then to get to those learning objectives, to satisfy those learning objectives, you obviously need content. What actual skill, what do they need to know in order to build these skills? Oh, that's, yeah. What do they need to know to build the skills to get the learning accomplished that's going to end up impacting either business or organization? All right, so today we're going to focus on the learning objectives. I'm going to erase this. Learning objectives. Many of you already know a lot about writing learning objectives. I want to talk about specifically learning objectives in e-learning. So the number one thing to consider when you're building e-learning objectives is what can learners demonstrate in the e-learning course, or is the expectation that they'll take an e-learning course and demonstrate skill outside of the e-learning course. So it's something to consider early on in your design. Um, you've probably heard of Bloom's taxonomy. If you have, hang out and get a refresher. If not, we'll go through it really quickly. I also included a worksheet that will help you go through Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is really an old but ageless way to break down how we learn. And it starts off with um, knowledge. So you know something. It's sort of the baseline of understanding, right? So it might be repeating information, memorization. It's not even that you can do anything with it, you just know it, right? The sky is blue. Then we have comprehension or understanding. Now, this is one level up from knowledge. So the sky is blue. Why is the sky blue? The sky is blue because all the other colors are absorbed, and so blue is the only one that shows up. That's why the sky is blue. I understand that. Great. Then we have application. Um, for application, this is, can you use the information in some way? Um, so for the sky is blue, um, I can apply this knowledge by um, asking my students uh, to guess what color the sky is during nighttime, during daytime. Some way to, it's not a really great example, but application would be somehow to apply it. Analysis is to break it down. Next level. So you're breaking down the components um, of your understanding into smaller bits. And then synthesis is building it back up in a new way. So for example, with the sky is blue, which I really wish I didn't pick as an example now because I don't know all that much about it, but synthesis would be the sky is blue, um, and so therefore, and that's because it's the color that um, does not get absorbed by the depths of the sky. That also explains why lakes are blue. So we've taken that information and we've applied it to something else. Okay, now we understand the same science behind why the sky is blue is also the science behind why lakes are blue or oceans are blue. All right, great. Then the last part is evaluation. And evaluation is um, to be able to opine on a topic, to justify it, or to look at it with a critical view. So, for example, again, with the sky is blue, we can take a look at the sky at the evening and we see that the sun reflects off the clouds and the sky is not blue. It is, in fact, pink and purple. And we can say, why is that? Is this true? Does this justify, does it still work within the argument that the sky is blue? How does it work, etc. Okay, so these are the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And as we're creating a course, um, we need to kind of understand what level of understanding we're expecting from our students. There might be some courses that are just these two. They might be introductory courses, maybe like a 100 level, right? Um, maybe these are 200 level courses, and then maybe these are 300 plus level courses. I mean, if you think about it in a collegiate level. Um, so these are really just your basic understanding. This is something that you can apply and understand and do something with, and then this is the higher level thinking. You might have a course that asks for you to do all these things, which means you have to write learning objectives for all of them. So in the sheet I gave you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over them right now, but in the sheet I gave you, there are verbs that go with each one of these um, to help you write learning objectives to satisfy these levels, this taxonomy. Okay, so a knowledge question would be like repeat. Um, understanding question would be like an explain. And you see the subtle difference between the two. An application question might be demonstrate, and so on and so forth throughout the list. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them. Okay. A couple notes on learning objectives. Understand is not a learning objective. We've all seen them or fallen into that pit, but you can't demonstrate understanding. You also can't demonstrate appreciation. I took an art class, and one of the learning objectives was that students will appreciate um, some things about the arts. I don't know how you show appreciation for the arts in a measurable way. You either do or you don't. I don't know. The other thing to know about learning objectives is to avoid uh, adding too much information to the learning objective. For example, um, A bad learning objective would be students will be able to identify that Google Drive has folders that can hold both Google files and third-party files. That's a learning objective that is literally stating what you need to know. So there's no use in stating that as a learning objective. Okay, it could just be in the course. Then lastly, the last part I want to talk about learning objectives is these should also be a part of your assessments. So if you have a question, if you have a learning objective that is um, students can identify um, uh, different tree types by leaves. One of your questions, or at least a couple of your questions maybe, should have students matching leaves to the tree types, right? So we have very clear, it was a learning objective, you can measure it through an assessment. Okay, so that is my very quick how to write learning objectives. The best way to write learning objectives is to practice and get feedback on them, which we will be doing, but this will get you started. And when we meet on Thursday, we will be talking about, I'm going to spend some time with Q&A over what we've been talking about these uh, past couple weeks. All right. Thank you for bearing with me in my cold, and I will talk to you on Thursday. Thank you. Cheers.